Some of them saw like, I think generated over 200,000 in revenue in the space of like 3-4 days, which is pretty bonkers. I can tell there's a few stressed people around the room. But no, to be fair, I feel like this year we've started planning earlier. I feel like every year you just start that much earlier because you realise how quickly it comes around. But yeah.
I think last year we got started maybe back end of August. This time it's like mid-August. So we're giving ourselves like a nice 2-week buffer. But yeah, busy but exciting. But I think that preparation is just key.
Yeah, massively. Well, yeah, welcome back to another episode of D2C Diaries. As promised, this is our big Black Friday episode where we are going to be going very, very deep into all things Black Friday. So we're going to give as much value as we can possible here. So going deep into learnings from last year, again, across Hambi Media and Soar with us, our creative and performance agencies. We've spent over 9 figures on these platforms. We've done multiple Black Fridays over the years. So again, it's something that we've looked to optimize time and time again. We're going to be going deep into our auditing process, our performance strategy, and also our creative strategy, and any tips and tricks there just so you can work smarter, not harder. Do just want to mention as well, like this is, want to announce that we are bringing out an absolute behemoth Black Friday guide across Hambi and Soar. So yeah, going even into much more depth across everything Black Friday, across both creative and performance. Like we are literally giving everything away that we possibly could over years of really kind of optimizing this process, as well as huge amounts of resources, frameworks, hooks. We're giving Canva templates of our best performing static designs, loads more. So if you want that, click the link below, and yeah, we'll get into that. So just want to start with some intros because Ollie's not here today. He's actually jet setting. He's on holiday somewhere in Spain, I think. But yeah, we'll do quick episode introductions and we'll get into the episode. So we'll start with you guys first.
Yeah, I can kick things off from my side. So Jamie, I've been at Soar just over 3 years. So it's my 4th Black Friday at Soar, which is pretty surreal when you look back and you think of the journey that we've gone on, not only as an agency, but individually as well. And from being heavily in the weeds of things last year as head of acquisition, kind of now slightly out of the weeds, could you say, from a client account perspective, as currently CMO, and so heading up all the marketing function. And I can vouch for what you just mentioned there, Lucas, around the Black Friday lead magnet. It is a behemoth and absolute value bomb coming your way.
Nice. I'll go next. So I'm Sam, COO of Soar Group, which is obviously overseeing Soar with us and Hambi Media. Been at the agency probably a similar time to Jamie. I think I started 2 weeks after. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. 4th Black Friday, they're getting bigger and bigger every year. Learned a ton. Been doing projects of my own on the side, and then prior to agency life, I was also just heavily in the weeds, doing a little bit of everything on the side. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Nice.
And I'm Fred. I'm the creative director at Hambi Media. So yeah, similar amount of time. I think I've been there for about 3 years. It was quite a small company, back in the day, and now it's grown a lot in the last few years. So it's been an amazing journey, and I've learned so much. Excited about the future.
Nice. Well, we'll dive straight in then. So let's just kick things off regarding like learnings from 2023, because I think there's a lot we can take from last year that we can apply to this year. I think obviously we've worked across some of the biggest brands in D2C and running their Black Friday campaigns last year. So a lot that we can learn from to apply here. So maybe from a performance perspective first, let's just touch on some of your guys' biggest learnings from being deep in the ad accounts, and then we'll go on to creative after.
Yeah, I can kick things off from my side. I think the biggest one last year was like for brands in particular, not to put all their eggs in one basket, some may say. And kind of the reason behind that is for a couple of clients which are more like problem solution oriented products where you can't force a problem on somebody. We found that like their BAU kind of creative like significantly outperformed the Black Friday kind of offer oriented messaging. And I think like breaking things down to first principles, like I just mentioned there, you can't force a problem on somebody. And it kind of really resonated in the feed that the things that we, or the way we saw the uplift is from just a post-purchase perspective, given that like we're sending the same quality of traffic to site and they're kind of going on and more eager to purchase given the offer and the kind of intent over Black Friday. And I think that all comes down to understanding your customer essentially. I think over the last 12 months, like us as an agency, we've been very invested in customer surveying through the use of no commerce and utilising that data to help inform Black Friday strategic decision making. I think that somewhat can go overlooked. And yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway from my side. And then when getting more technical, I think that the reason behind that is like for this scenario in particular, the audience of the client was like female between 40 and 60. And when it comes to like the cost to advertise, the CPM, like it was through the roof anyway. And then chucking on a sale creative, which somewhat like the CPM of sale creatives is higher anyway. So I think, yeah, that just massively was the key learning from last year and something that we're going to definitely take into this year for sure.
Yeah, I can build on that a little bit. So one that I wanted to mention does relate to understanding the customer a bit as well. And it's understanding how that translates to your offer and your sale periods as well. So last year, again, working with a larger brand that really tried pushing things a little bit more in terms of the length of how long they're running the sale. And I think that should link with buying habits of your consumers as well. So understanding when they buy and I guess how much they can spend with you at a given date as well. You got to think about when they're getting paid, when have they got the most money. If your target audience is business owners, for example, that's going to be a lot different to if your target audience is like 18 to 24, where they might be relying on a payday more than other types of consumers. Then figuring out how that fits into when you want to run your offer is key, because there was an example where that growth rate could have been a lot higher if there was more in-depth analysis actually done on the customer and linking that to your offer and when you're going to run the offer. So that's a pretty big one. And then I think what Jamie mentioned there around business as usual, creative, and just what you've already got going on inside your offer and ad account is key. It's very likely that that is not going to outperform Black Friday unless it's something like a giftable product where you have got a lot of consumers waiting in your funnel that want that offer and they might not be as, like Jamie said, problem focused. Yeah, I think that.
I think just to add on that as well, like a key trend is that we see clients where because of Black Friday and the hype around Black Friday, if you're holding two shopping bags, one's Black Friday, one's BAU, like we see a lot of clients drop the BAU shopping bag and they're just left with the Black Friday one.
Last year.
Where it's like,
Yeah, exactly. And I think like we definitely, overlook that to some degree, because I think a lot of brands really want to go heavily into Black Friday, and almost if you're looking at it like a pipeline, if we're creating those Black Friday batches, from a creative and ad perspective, if that then runs completely dry and we're putting 100% of our eggs into offer-focused Black Friday ads, we got to remember this is a short period that we're working within, and it shouldn't necessarily mean that we pivot the whole strategy within the ad account, because then when we get into December, another busy period with gifting and Christmas, we haven't necessarily had anything warming up or driving that. So yeah, completely agree with those points.
Got another learning that's performance, quite macro related actually. And last year, Represent clothing brand, they did a pre-Black Friday offer, whereas essentially like 20 to 30% off site-wide and then a few discontinued products on like more aggressive offers. And I saw quite a few brands doing that pre-Black Friday offer. And then when it got to Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you do a more aggressive offer. And I think that is just the best way to completely erode your customer lifetime value. So that's one that I would recommend brands not do.
Interesting. So what, regarding that then, go a bit deeper into why that would really impact the lifetime value of the customer.
So if you've got an offer and you've purchased through that for 20% off, and then Cyber Monday comes around and suddenly that product that you've just ordered is 50% off, you're not going to be happy, are you? So I think there's a way around that, and that's just through setting expectations with your customers if that's something you do want to run. But then also just like segmenting, so via your emails. Don't do 2 big email blasts to the same customers, because there's going to be a big overlap there between people who've purchased on the pre-Black Friday offer that might not have had a great offer as it was on Cyber Monday. So one to watch out for, I think.
And then with regarding that then, like, would you more so recommend from a strategic perspective, you mentioned there about segmenting your email list, but I think what about in terms of like warming up those creatives and really teasing for the period, to drive people, say, to sign up through emails, through the organic socials, driving that, building that hype and interest in what's to come.
Yeah, I think that's a good one as well. So building that list up before through paid, but then obviously CRM channels as well is one. There's definitely an argument to say when you're going through that build up and warm up phase, maybe you're driving them to like a competition where they can give you the email in, like, for signing up to a competition. There's an argument to say, like, how valuable are those people that you sign up, because they might just be signing up for that competition. So I did some loose analysis on this last week and looked at people who signed up to a competition and the LTV of that cohort over time. And it concluded that if you target people that are already in the funnel and give them the offer of signing up for the competition versus targeting people that were completely cold, the warm customers actually resulted in more LTV, which does make perfect sense. So I definitely think there's a right and wrong way to do those. And the right way does look like it's looking at who's in your database already but hasn't necessarily signed up for emails, and then nurturing them through that up until the lead up as well.
I think another build on that as well is when it comes to like competition as one example, is ensuring whatever is associated with that competition links to the problem that your product solves. Whereas if it doesn't link, then you're just going to funnel a load of kind of unnecessary traffic into your funnel into this year.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So Fred, let's get on to some creative learnings from last year. I know we had a load, and then we'll kind of share just some of our best performers across all of our accounts, some of those kind of core macro insights. So what were some of those biggest learnings from your perspective?
So I think one of the main things really is this idea of not complicating things from a creative perspective in terms of the actual creative itself. The temptation is to kind of put more information in the ad or try and kind of like talk about features and kind of problems and talk about the audience too much and just kind of pack as much as you can in. But, the ads that performed best were just the ones that focused on expressing the offer or expressing the discount ultimately. And I think it's more of like a exercise in discipline as well to do that. We had the same discount. We did, for example, like a static, and then we also did a video, which we put, lots more time into, lots more, budget and production into, and, the static would often perform better, so it's just, I just think it's important that like realizing that like everyone, there are offers everywhere, there are discounts everywhere, and people are like hunting for an offer basically. So if you say anything that isn't the offer, then you really, you have the danger of like losing people. And then I think one of the other things as well is just not forgetting Christmas, because it's like very easy to just like focus a lot on Black Friday and, put all of this planning into Black Friday, but then realize that it's like end of November, and actually you don't have that creative that's kind of like really seasonal. So, at least the way we approach it, we approach Black Friday and Christmas together because it's like they're right next to each other.
I think with that as well is like one thing we did quite well last year was almost using Black Friday as a driver for Christmas. So, those are angles around, almost how we how you can kind of save money by buying your Christmas presents during the Black Friday period, and gifting, and, you know, almost planning early for that period, and tapping into some of those kind of core human desires from that perspective. We saw some success with as well. So I completely agree with all of that. So let's touch on now like some of those winning focused ads that we've seen. I think from my perspective, some really, really strong ones. You know, there was this one from Space Goods, and really we from a video perspective, we see success when we are using really organic native feeling concepts. So kind of following on from what Fred said, how do we simplify that messaging as much as possible, you know, whilst also not disrupting the user on the feed? So this is kind of an insight from the whole year, really, like how can we tap into those really native organic feeling concepts that feel a little bit more raw, and feel less addy, because again, during that Black Friday period, you're going to see a lot of that very direct response focused creative. So this Black Friday ad from Space Goods, it firstly opened with a hook of, well, actually it was me. But this was one of the, it almost feels like I'm just shouting myself out now. I felt one of the best performers, but I had to jump in last minute because we had a creator basically drop off. But I'm actually, it's a very obscure hook where I'm literally consuming the product that's on the floor because the milk spills on the floor. So really that obscurity, if we can bring that in, that we see a lot of success from that perspective, because again, such a difficult period with so much competition during Black Friday. So that obscurity is really, really important. And then the way that we brought that Black Friday offer in instantly was me then saying, I got a text from my boss saying about this Black Friday offer, and then it was the text message conversation between myself and the boss. So bringing almost that native element in of you know, kind of delivering that message through a text message, we saw a lot of success with. And then I think the key after that was like really getting in and out. So we covered those core, you know, product backings and benefits. We had the offer on screen throughout the creative, I think is another big one, just to make sure we're almost giving those opportunities to drive that CTR up as much as we can. And then we're at that CTA as quickly as possible. So ensuring we're keeping that concept around 20 seconds. Fred, maybe touch on some of those statics that we've seen a lot of success with, because I think some of these best performing statics just absolutely crushed. Some of them saw like, you know, I think generated over 200,000 in revenue in the space of like 3-4 days, which is pretty bonkers. So yeah.
And yeah, I think what's great about it is it's an organic feel. So that one was, you know, a learning from previously in the year, you know, that kind of secret filming over the shoulder of someone texting, you know, it's a kind of trend that's been going around last year. That you know, that was a really good performing BAU ad for them. So we took that concept and just brought in the Black Friday messaging deal into it, you know, and it was, the temptation obviously is to try and like do more, and to try and really like, you know, build it into like more of a proper creative, but actually just trying to like keep it simple and really like looking at what has worked in the last 365 days was just, you know, a good part of that. And I think, as well, like at the bottom, elevating with social proof, you know, it's remembering that the audience for Black Friday, they're a small audience, but they're high intent. You know, they're people that there's not many of them, but they really want the product already. All they're doing is waiting for that deal. So, you know, using things like trust, social proof, objection handling, those kind of lower in the funnel kind of messaging points, if any, are the ones that are key, in trying to avoid those kind of like upper in the funnel kind of like problem aware, unaware even. You know, sometimes you have a brand where those higher in the funnel messages are what convert. So, you know, in that sense, that's why you want to, you know, that would be okay to still use those. But I think for a lot of the time, brands, you know, they have messages that work down the whole funnel, you know, objections, offers, all kinds of things. So it's the low in the funnel customers that are the kind of low hanging fruit.
I think the key with those text message concepts is like simplify. Like I sometimes see them being done incorrectly, where there's just too much text and it overwhelms the consumer. You've got to really simplify that messaging and ensure that from a hierarchy perspective, we're looking at the right thing at the right time. Again, we use caps and things to do that. So really their eyes go straight to the text message. And then what we've done after that is added PR below in the bottom banner of the static. We'll put all of these, by the way, in the description. They're all within the lead magnet resource as well, under our best performers from the previous year. But I think that PR element is also really, really important from a trust building perspective when we're getting to that like product aware stage in the funnel.
I think two things to build from that. One example that do the native concept really well. Like Audit, for as an example, like a high proportion of their kind of audiences, kind of females, older demographic, who are on Meta, Facebook as a platform. And like one example that I've seen in their ad library, which is like taking the, when someone comments in like a community on Facebook and there's that multicolored like background, like pulling that background color and then adding their static on top. It's very native and eye-catching in feed, which I think, brands can do better at.
100%. There's so many ways it can be done. It's like, think about how you can deliver that message in a different way. iPhone text messages, WhatsApp, even FaceTimes, or like you say, Google searches, Facebook groups, all of these things that everyone's aware of, that is just a new way of delivering that same message, I think is really important.
I think if you've done a really good job of like all the preparation as well, so nurturing your email list, making sure that audience pool that you've got at that retarget in the lower funnel levels, if you've done that really well, you should be fine with these concepts. Like they should be enough to get people over the edge. So they're very much lower funnel. Here's the offer. Here's how much you can save. Social proof. Those touch points that are gonna get them over the line should work very, very well if you've done the prep.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. The next one I just wanted to touch on, again, did incredibly well. It got like a 9 ROAS and I don't know if you remember that one.
Safe style, is it?
The BOGO on the wall. Do you remember?
Oh, when he painted it on the wall.
Yeah, when he painted it on the wall. Just such a hilarious concept. But basically, and again, I think this is a great example of like doing, working smarter, not harder. So that creative actually was one that was running in the account previously, and all we did was replace the hook. And then we added the Black Friday sticker throughout the creative. So it was actually more like a solution-aware focused ad rather than something right at the bottom of the funnel. But it was just the hook that was replaced to something really, really obscure. So again, this is just another reminder to really get creative with those hooks and make them as obscure as possible, tap into those best performers. But basically this creative, just to contextualize, the girl runs in the room and said, "Oh my God, what have you written on our wall?" And it just says BOGO of the offer. Now, I know sometimes it's going to be hard to get UGC creators to write BOGO on their walls, but the idea here is like, how can we in as obscure way as possible grab that attention whilst keeping that offer front and center, and then we're basically reskinning that concept that was already doing really well in the ad account, with just that label throughout about that offer, so you're giving more opportunity to click off platform. And I think there's so many quick wins there that brands can do, looking at their best performers from the last 90 days with that. Cool. Fred, any more there? I mean, we've obviously got so many within this resource. We just wanted to touch on a couple there before we get into some of those key takeaways. But were there any others that you wanted to share?
Yeah, there was this other one here, also from the Essence Vault. It's like same idea of taking, this isn't a trend that's working as well at the moment, although it's still pretty good, but like the Apple Notes trend, was really popular in 2023. So there was another example of an ad here. And I think it's a headline that grabs attention, biggest Black Friday deal ever, quite simple. But I think also what's important is once you've got the audience's attention, you need to get that deal in or that offer in like straight away, because it's very tempting, with, the kind of the AIDA framework, grab attention, create some interest, then give them the details or the desire. You've got to remove that interest part and just go, here's attention, here's the information, because that's all you're going to get. If a hook is, 3 to 5 seconds in any other time of the year, it's almost like 2 seconds is what you've got in Black Friday. It's sort of like being in the most busy sort of like marketplace ever. So yeah, this ad does a really good job at doing that. It underscores the free. Such a big...
That's like in a notes, almost like the iPhone notes page.
Yes, exactly. So it's in the iPhone's note page with a headline and then a little subheading which has the actual offer, and then below that, in the kind of body, is the 3 points that are on many of the top performing ads for this brand. It's the 3 points that, through spending millions on ads, that's how we know these points work. So yeah, and I think the only final thing to say is that it's like product focused. So, you hear the advice of like, don't talk about features, talk about benefits, talk about how your product impacts the consumer and things like that, which is obviously really, valid and really true. But at Black Friday, you've got people that are already aware of your product. They already want your product. All you're trying to do is push them over the edge, So actually the images you use have got to be around the product. You've got to like tap into that kind of like desire, almost materialistic desire of I want this now kind of thing. So I think that's why this ad generated over 100,000.
Maybe a way to look at that is like attention, interest, desire all into one headline or in just one section of the asset is the way to think about it, perhaps.
I think you've mentioned it before, Lucas, where like you've got to treat the hook as like its own video to an extent nowadays, given how short people's attention span is, and then revert back to like the core messaging of the ad.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like looking at it in layers. So you've got the verbal hook, you've got the visual hook, you've got the sound stopper, which could be additional sound on top of the verbal hook, and then you've got your text on screen, whatever that might be. So making sure we're getting all of those layers in place, as well as motion as well, which we've just historically seen. If you've got motion in the hook, like it's just, you're going to get a much better thumb stop ratio. And weirdly, Ollie and I spoke about this and did a bit of an analysis of just all-time best performing hooks, and it was something crazy. Like the 60-70% of the ones that were over 40% thumb stop ratio were filmed outside. Which I think is interesting, because I think so many hooks are filmed internally, and externally gives you more opportunity for almost pattern interruption, because if you're on a busy street, there's loads of people. I just don't think you're seeing people kind of film hooks as often externally as internally, so that's an insight as well. But yeah, I guess just to round that whole section off, again, like I said, we'll be sharing this full resource with much more examples, and obviously the Canva templates, so you can very quickly and easily create these yourself. But the leveraging the native features is obviously a big one here. I think statics during this period, and unless you guys disagree, is a king all the time.
100%.
So really kind of tapping into statics, and if we're using high production and UGC, I think the more effective way we see it being done, it's like, what is going to give us the best chance of success? It's reskinning those best performers with new hooks, with banners that go across screen, or just really simplify that messaging. So we're going lower in the funnel, that product aware or most aware creatives. So we're getting to that CTA as quickly as possible. Obviously, another one is just that social proof and trust building. So how can we really enhance that throughout the creative? I like to say that for us to drive better CTR and CVR, one thing we've been telling our team a lot more recently is like, let's bring in those second CTAs earlier in the creative. So whether you're mentioning the guarantees, the offers, or the PR much earlier in the creative, rather than leaving it till the CTA at the end, it's just giving more touch points to actually click off platform as well. So yeah, there's that as well. I think as well, just like the really maximize that visual hierarchy within the creative. So making sure our eyes are going to the right things. So we need to make sure that the first thing people see are that offer. I think we can be clever as well, and I'm sure you guys could touch on this, but how can we make discounts sound better than they are? So, rather than just almost like layering them. So 40% off plus 15% off below, or 40% off plus free X. So almost layering those offers in.
I think we've got some interesting data on that in particular for like fashion-based brands. So like a high proportion of people, like the kind of benefits associated with clothing are somewhat different towards like a skincare product, for example. And like we had one client where they've had some historical data of like a flat discount working, and then versus like an up to discount. And when comparing the data, the up to kind of discount was around like 10-15% more efficient than the kind of 30% off everything.
Interesting.
And when looking at like the psychology of that, whilst for the 30%, you were probably getting a better bang for your buck across their best selling products, like it wasn't as appealing. Like if someone said like up to 60% versus 20%, like the up to 60 sounds more appealing. So it's going to be more enticing. People are going to click through. And then if they're shopping and they see something they really like, whilst it may only have 30-40% off, they're going to buy it. Like they're halfway there. So it's like, how can we get somebody from the ad to your website? And when they're on the website, do the best job, our best possible job of like getting them to be a customer.
Yeah, I love that.
I think on that, one thing to remember there is maybe just getting like really tactical with that period as well. So looking at your products that you might be discontinuing, use Black Friday for that. If you can get rid of products throughout that period by giving really aggressive discounts, then you can link that to what Jamie said there. So maybe your discontinued products have got like 70% off, and then all of a sudden you can use that as that attention mechanism to get all across your ads, which kind of links onto this point around it just being as easy to understand as possible. Like the worst thing ever is trying to figure out how much you're going to save. It's like, just tell me.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's like you can say 50% off if you do just have a simple kind of like offer. You can say that in 3 different ways. You can say 50% off. You can say, was this price now that price? And then you can say save X amount, and it's like those kind of, the way you express the discount are like, that's the sort of thing where your variations should be coming in. Instead of trying to sort of test messaging, it's like, what's the best way that the audience is going to, understand that offer?
I think the other one as well is like, with the up to as an example, like coming back to like the values associated with the brand, it's got to be like authentic. Like you can't say up to 60% and then have one product that's 60% off and then the rest have like 10%.
Damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, amazing. Well, I guess just as a little segue before we get into the next section here, where we're probably more so going to go through, obviously the auditing process, and then we're going to go deep into the strategy side. I'd love to just like get everyone's opinion on this. So, brands that maybe are fairly new or are almost contemplating whether to even be running Black Friday offers, because there is the argument that it almost devalues your product. I mean, a great example of a brand that doesn't really do offers or Black Friday is Athletic Greens. What are people's opinion on this? Like whether brands should be doing this or not?
I think from my side, it all depends on like what's the motive behind the offer. Like if you look at Athletic Greens, for example, their product's not seen as a commodity, it's seen as a necessity. And like when you look at what they're doing year round, it's not that they're not running an offer because year round they are, but it's how they're presenting that offer. Like everything that they do associated with that offer is value adding, not value, like not taking away value. It's adding value to their all round offering. So as long as you're doing that to the customer experience, then I don't think it really matters. Like if you're not running a Black Friday like offer, discount, deal, whatever you want to call it, like you're missing out, in my opinion.
Completely agree. I think a lot of e-commerce brands might not even be at that stage yet where they've built up a significant amount of brand equity. So you've got to think like, is a sale really going to diminish what already isn't there? And then just another thing is like, you need a business before you've got a brand. And one way to create a business is by maximizing revenue. And I think the Q4 period is a great way to do that. And we've looked at loads of like LTV cohorts from that Black Friday period. And I don't think I've ever seen a Black Friday cohort that is not that valuable. I've seen certain circumstances where the Black Friday cohort or just the Q4 cohort overall is way more valuable over time, which is interesting.
I think to that point as well, it's like from a retention strategy, it's like understanding like how you're speaking to those Black Friday customers versus other customers. I think that's one things that brands can do better at as well.
Yeah, it's not like one or the other as well. It's like you can't be. It's not like you're a business or a brand. You know, there are plenty of like big brands that still run offers and they still retain their brand equity kind of thing. You know, I think to go, you know, if the brand is so important, then yeah, you maybe don't want to kind of like go full offers throughout the entire year. But you know, it's kind of like it's just an opportunity, isn't it? You know, and it's like people are there for an offer, so you know, yes, you can go against it, but do you know what I mean? I think it's like it's understandable to be putting out an offer during the Black Friday period. It's not very off-brand for many brands.
Yeah, I think it almost aligns with the whole debate that we sometimes have with our clients around brand creative versus performance creative, and it's, you know, trying to go too deep on brand before actually having the sales there. So yeah, I think it comes back to that point of like, you know, without that performance creative, that direct response creative, there is no brand to be able to build on. So yeah, completely agree with those points. Cool. Well, let's get into like the kind of auditing process. Then I think in terms of how we look at this from a creative perspective to a paid perspective, it's very, very similar. I think just for us to quickly touch on from our side before Jamie and Sam get deeper into what that audit looks like. With us, we're going to look at 90-day view and then year-on-year view as well around that Black Friday period. And data is king, right? Like this is what's going to give us the best possible chance of success. So the more you can lean into that data, the better. You know, it's not a time to be guessing. It's not a time to be heavily testing. We need to do what we can to give ourselves the best possible chance at success. So we use a tool across the whole group called Motion. It's a creative data analysis tool. Again, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of it. We'll put details down below as well to Motion. But I think one thing we're obviously looking at from a creative perspective is firstly, you know, spend is really, really important, and looking at some of those core hard metrics that depend on the unit economics of the brand, such as CPAs. But from a soft metrics perspective, the core things we're looking at are thumb stock ratio. So you know, really we're looking at a minimum of 30% for a strong hook. CTR, so we want really around a minimum of 1% there, and then hold rate as well, between like 8 to 10% as a minimum. And the reason we're looking at those variables and isolating them with those best performers is because I think we can learn a lot about those creatives and what we can do to drive them forward during the Black Friday period. So for example, if we've got a creative that has a really strong hold rate and CTR, but not so strong a hook, I think we can learn from those thumb stock ratios that have performed incredibly well. Is there a way we can literally just plug that hook in front of the video with a Black Friday offer, or alternatively bring in one of our obscure Black Friday hooks that we mentioned ahead of that video? So really, if we are looking at the CTR and hold rate, we're looking at that body. So what are the best opportunities there for the creators that beat those benchmarks that we can reskin those creatives to drive much better performance? And the same goes with those hooks. Like what can we learn from those all-time best performing hooks that we can apply to our Black Friday creative? But during that audit process, we are really looking for those best performers that we can bring into the period, and as well those core learnings like Fred mentioned around some of those statics. So we have those insights from last year's 90-day view where we could see that those note page native style statics were working incredibly well. How can we take that and apply Black Friday headlines to that? So taking those best performing statics with the best CVR, the best CTR, and apply, just literally swapping out the headline to what the offer is. So really kind of using that audit to familiarize yourself with those soft metrics that will really inform the decisions that we have for the period. Again, just very top level there, but just wanted to touch on from a creative perspective. I'd love to hear how you guys approach it from a paid perspective, because I'm sure there's a little bit more depth there when we're looking at it through a financial lens as well.
I think starting from the more tactical side of things from my side, from a paid media perspective, I think the key emphasis to double down on is like, don't change what's been working throughout the rest of the year when it comes to Black Friday. And when looking at like the view of kind of the data split, whether it's that like the trailing 90-day window or the year-on-year view, I think one thing to kind of keep the same is the split between kind of each platform, whether you're advertising on more than one platform, just the one platform. I think it's like to keep that holistic around the same, with the understanding of like how and why customers are purchasing, to help drive that forwards. And then the other kind of thing we utilize, which I can hand over to Sam to dive into, like the forecasting and the financial element, as he's the wizard, should we say, when it comes to all things finances. I think it's just like, again, understanding of the value of your customers that you've acquired throughout the year so far, and like how many of those are coming back, how many new customers you're predicting that you're going to acquire, and then ensuring that your business is set up from an operational perspective. Because like coming to a tactical media buying perspective, it's a very similar approach. I just think that the main thing that differs is how you're integrating your Black Friday kind of creatives and kind of messaging into the current kind of campaign setup, and kind of get straight to the point. I think there's a mixture of the two, of like creating kind of new Black Friday oriented campaigns, but then not taking that away from what's currently live and launching new creatives within existing campaigns, as they've been kind of proven to work throughout the year so far.
I think just tapping into what you just said there as well, regarding like from an audience perspective, we will also build a list of who were those best before. If we're from a UGC perspective, if we're creating UGC specifically for Black Friday, we will build a list of whoever the people that created those best performing videos were. Because again, it's just giving ourselves more chance of success. Although statics are always going to be the biggest driver, like as we discussed, and within the lead magnet, you'll see there's still loads of best performers there from a UGC perspective, and tapping into those creators as well, and getting an idea from that, like, okay, what are those core angles and the types of people that are resonating most with these creatives? Like, what can we learn about that we can now apply to Black Friday on top of that BAU? So yeah,
agreed. I can go quite high level. We like to walk clients through more of like an ops and some finance focused bits, but I think that audit process should be a bit of a reflection as well. Like what position were we in from an ops perspective and cash perspective in not only November, but September, October, November, December, and then going into Q1 as well? Because performance across Black Friday has a very, very strong relationship with the operational organisation of a business and the cash position of the business as well. So ideally, you've like already done a forecast before even approaching Black Friday. All that's left to do from there is just execute and go into the more tactical bits like we've touched on already. But I think that forecasting piece is massive, because if you don't know what you're expected to do over Black Friday, how are you going to predict what stock you're going to sell through? Because the last thing you want over Black Friday is to sell out. That's just a complete momentum crusher. So first of all, do the forecast and like understand what you actually want out of Black Friday to inform your stock positions. And then touching on that stock aspect, it's looking at what position you're in last year from like within ops as well. You could easily like break your business over Black Friday if you over ordered, for example, because suddenly when you've put this massive stock order in for Black Friday, you've got a lot of cash tied up in stock. So you already have got pretty large cash constraints going into that period. Then when you go into that period, you also need to fund marketing spend, which is very expensive. But then you've also got in Q1 or just after Q1 a hefty VAT bill from Q4. So you could really suffocate yourself if you're not doing ops correctly and you're not going through that more rigorous, reflective process.
We definitely saw the knock-on of that, like in 2022, just coming out of COVID, and then the impact that had in 2023 for businesses. And just to touch on our like forecasting piece from a bottom-up perspective, Sam, like if you want to touch on like the kind of customer segments that we utilize in order to like build that forecast.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's a process we've almost mastered. So bottom-up forecasting is looking at what is already going into the business and then setting a target off that. Whereas maybe like traditional way of forecasting is top-down, where you'd set a target and then figure out how you get there. So us using that bottom-up process, we're looking at what's already going into the business, and that is usually comprised of different segments like Jamie mentioned there. So it's looking at your returning customer mix, and we'd like to split that into recent and non-recent. Recent being last 6, non-recent being super broad, like anything above 6. And these two customers are like very predictable in how they'll come back. So you can actually look at what's already going through the business in terms of those repeat rates, compare that to Black Friday, and then apply that to this Black Friday, and you're left with a forecast that you can actually be really confident in. I think off the back of that, that's when you can look at your ops decisions, so stock, but then also like your team as well. You've got to remember that you're going to get an influx of returns over December and Jan, and also like customer service, can they handle that? Staff in warehouse. So there's a lot to consider there. So I think the forecast needs to play a massive part in that.
Nice, really interesting. I assume you'll have some parts on this as well in the lead magnet as well. Cool. So yeah, as we keep mentioning, link down below. Cool. Well, let's get into a bit more then from a, I know it's the lines are slightly blurred there, but from a strategy perspective, I think we can maybe just firstly touch on how we approach strategy during this period. And I think, again, we keep coming back to this point, but it's really, really important that we keep that BAU running, and that remains front of mind on top of what we're doing from a strategic perspective with that Black Friday creative batch. So obviously, once we've done that in-depth audit and we have an idea on those core elements that we mentioned regarding those best performers from the last 90 days and also the previous Black Friday period, and then obviously going into the year-on-year view as well, we then will kind of start looking at different layers of that strategy. So one thing that we've been doing much more of this year, going into creative batches, is being really intentional about how we're setting how we're labeling creatives at different stages within the funnel. So when we're looking at that, we're basically breaking it down into creators that are unaware. So again, types of creators that could be as founder stories, more kind of brand focused creative, very educational pieces around what the problem actually is. Because again, as we know, there's a lot of products out there that are solving a problem that a lot of us don't think we need. And an example I always use is like the filtered shower head and how it can damage your skin. Because me personally, I didn't know that until recently. So yeah, that's a good example of when you might want to go slightly higher within the funnel. Problem aware, again, is still pretty high up within that funnel. We're focusing more here on problem aware types of problem solution types of creative, really agitating the before state, the pain points, the personal transformations and journeys, as well as those testimonials. So people that are very aware of the problem, but they don't yet know what that solution is. The next is solution aware. So people that they're very aware of that problem, they're aware of the range of potential solutions. And here what we're trying to do is, let them know that our solution is the best one. So we're focusing on us versus them creatives here, and really kind of focusing on product backing, benefits, and USP focused creatives. So we're not agitating the pain points or the before state so much. We're going into that solution and then why you should be using our product over, say, a competitor's or a solution outside of that market. Then when we go slightly lower is product aware. So again, this is much warmer audiences, people that are lower within the funnel. Here, really, they're aware of the problem, they're aware of the solution, they're aware of our product as that solution. And our job here is really getting them over the line. So focusing on real trust building, objection handling, and also like PR as well as ways, or like how many reviews we've got as a way of really driving them over the line. So when they know what that solution is, they have those objections, and we're here to tackle those, or help further build that trust. And then finally, most aware. So that's just creatives that are literally there for providing an offer of some form. Now, I think the reason why we want to mention this is because I think it's really important going into this period that the batch of creative that we're producing for Black Friday, we really need to set what these splits are. Now, we're obviously going a lot we're in terms of what those splits look like, we're going a lot lower within the funnel. So mainly tapping into those product aware and most aware creatives. That doesn't mean, however, that we're not going to tap into maybe problem and solution aware, but much less. So a way that we would usually do this is like 60 to 80% of those Black Friday specific creatives, this is alongside BAU, will be focused on product aware and most aware. But maybe that kind of 10 to 20% that we're still within that product problem and solution aware creatives, could be those reskinning concepts that maybe follow those frameworks that are higher in the funnel, but we're going in with those Black Friday hooks or offers first, or have those banners attached to them. Or alternatively, we're producing net new creatives that have one Black Friday hook and one normal hook, so they can live within the ad account with a longer shelf life and have a hook that isn't necessarily related to that Black Friday period. So that's the first bit that we'll focus on, those performance funnel splits and setting what that looks like within that time. Fred, I don't know if you want to tap into now the next layer that we'll look at, which is almost content types. And we've kind of created our own names for what we call these sections. But I think, again, it's useful to know during the period.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we kind of split things into three main buckets. We have big swing, big impact, and easy impact. So it really relates to kind of what's a kind of tried and tested framework within the account. So essentially a big swing is something that's completely new. It's something that's sort of like a bit of an experiment. It's never really been tried before. A big impact is something that is like kind of like framework based, like a, classic sort of 3 reasons why, something that's just like known to have worked for lots of brands, and there's a framework there for it.
Or very data driven. So there's data to suggest this works.
Exactly. Because a brand can have its own framework, right? That we just know each time that kind of like that type of ad gets created, it works basically. And then the final one is easy impact, which is a bit like a framework, but just much shorter. It's a little bit like that Essence 4 ad that we saw earlier with the kind of looking over the phone. It's something that's really kind of native, quick, and easy to film. That is like really sort of like, if it's a video, under 10 seconds or around 10 seconds, and it just gets to the point and then gets out basically. So yeah, in terms of how that splits, we would definitely really want to reduce those big experimental pieces. So yeah, 10% of those big swings. And then for the other two, it's a bit of a mix really, because we don't want to neglect the fact that after Black Friday ends, we need creative. So I think like what we would normally go for is 40% around the big impact, which is kind of using those frameworks, and then 50% of those easy impact, kind of really short and sweet ads that just come in, deliver that message, and get out.
And yeah, in terms of like working smarter, not harder there with those framework driven concepts, it's like making sure we have hooks available for that are offer focused and not. And when we go big swing, like I would say, get those big swings out in the hook. So, an example is that one that we mentioned where BOGO was written on the wall. That is almost a big swing, but we're providing that within the hook rather than testing something completely new, because this isn't the time for us to necessarily be doing that.
Yeah, it's also quite good as well to test like evergreen type content. So stuff that doesn't necessarily say Black Friday, that just kind of highlights the discount. Because then what you find, if that ad obviously has gone through the learning, and then it can still be used throughout the Christmas period, you know, or if your offer is continuing after the Black Friday period, you know, that creative can just carry on as normal, basically, which is quite a good hack.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, to recap, we've set our performance funnel splits, our content type splits. Obviously, these will be creating, when we layer all these together, the concept itself. The next is those persona and angles. Now, to note, this isn't something that we will focus on as much during this period. Obviously, when we get into easy impact creatives that are very direct response in nature, we're really there to get in and out. So they're short and sweet. We're not going to be focusing on, personas, angles so much. It's more focused around those kind of core offers. But I think it's also important to understand from an angle perspective what those core angles are going to be that we're going to drive through that period. Now, this is where we look back to our audit and, what are those best performing angles from the previous Black Friday period, as well as the last 90 days, and how we can tap into them with almost that layer of offer on top of that. So it's good to have an idea regarding what those persona and angle splits are going to look like. The next thing is obviously, and an offer is almost an angle, right? So what those offers look like. Now, I think, Fred, maybe if you go through some of those potential offers that brands can tap into, and then I'd love to know from you guys, like, what you tell brands regarding, what they need to think about from an economics perspective, because there's no point having an offer if they're going to be losing money from that offer.
Yeah, so I'll quick fire through a few ones. So there's fixed percentage off site wide, free gift with purchase, buy one get one free. For every £50 spent, save £10. Bundle offers, those are great. Free express shipping on all orders. Early site access for email subscribers. Mystery box, gift wrapping offers, and then upsell and cross-sell promos as well. And I think just generally free gifts as well. Which I don't know if I said that, but yeah, that one's a really good one.
I think when you link those, like the first 5, I think it is that you mentioned, you could like label them as like core offers, and then the last 5 is like supplementary offers. So it's like the last 5 are the tactical things, whereas like if like what's in your back pocket if things aren't going as they should do, or if you want to kind of squeeze the juice out of the rest of the sale period, whether that's put like, I think there's a brand that kind of we worked with last year that like when looking at their data post Black Friday with the amount of revenue that they generated just by like upselling gift wrap, it's phenomenal. So it's like, I think a question like constantly in my mind is like, what's in your back pocket for if you need it? I think that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, nice.
That kind of links to what I mentioned earlier with Represent. So they had a back pocket offer that they also sent to the existing purchasers of the core Black Friday offer, which was more aggressive than the core one, which is why it's a good way to annoy people. But yeah, I think offer is key. So like Lucas said there, understanding what your offer means for contribution margin and bottom line, how much profit is actually generated off the back of that. So inside this monster Notion page, there is a calculator where you can basically test your offer. And I think what's important here is testing your offer, looking at the output. So what is the target ROAS? What is the target CPA associated with that? And what does that look like when you compare it to last year? What was your CPA looking like last year? What does your CPA look like this year? What's the growth rate? And then you can apply that and think about your offer from that lens as well. But yeah, I think the bottom line there is don't reinvent the wheel as well. Like if you've done an offer in previous years and it works really well, do it again. And then keep a few in your back pocket, like Jamie said.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, out of interest, like, not all brands have the luxury of being a TEV, which have great gross margins. What advice do you have for those brands that want to be impactful during this period, but maybe don't have strong gross margins to be able to play with from an offer perspective?
Yeah, I think that's where you've got to look at how you can reposition your offer slightly. So is there anything you can be doing to your offer to manipulate that gross margin a bit, a little guess? So AOV, can you be pushing that up? So what Fred mentioned there was a good one where you can basically do like threshold offers. So spend 100 and get X off. Because if you know that your gross margin at a £40 AOV isn't that great, it might be a little bit higher when you start pushing it up to, say, £100. I don't know, maybe like your shipping as a percentage of revenue comes down a little bit, same for some other costs associated with that. So definitely experimenting around, and I think that's why that calculator's there. So just test it out as much as possible and craft an offer off the back of that.
I think as well, one thing I'd add to that is like, if you're doing something like tiered, like make it so easy that like whatever the customers does, like they have no option but not to leave, but to purchase. Like see so many brands like they might have a tiered offer, but then they've got to do 3 more steps in order to get that product. Whereas like those 3 more steps, they've completed 2 and then you've lost them. So it's like ensuring that there's, if you're doing some form of like tiered offer, there's less steps involved for the customer as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Just as we say this all the time, just minimize those potential friction points almost. I think another one on top of that is like free gift as well, because again, you're not impacting the margins of that product. And a lot of the time, these free gifts cost near to nothing, but then they're quite a nice, value add to then push to purchase.
Yeah, the value of that word free is huge when you can incorporate it into an ad. Yeah,
I think Mo's Ali references one they use with Native quite a lot. I think it was like the travel packs, where he'd like give them away for free or maybe for a tiny cost, but the margin on that was like 90+%. So if you've got those products, which most brands do, use them.
I think that links to the point that you mentioned earlier as well, Lucas, around like brand equity. Like if you was to like do some form of like discount or additional discount of around like 20-30%, whatever it is. Whereas if you're comparing, like you're giving something away for free, that might be a sample. That's like value adding. And like the other key thing to mention to that, which we had a brand we worked with last year that did that, in my opinion, really well, is like, whilst Native, they're giving away a travel pack, like make that travel pack complementary to the original product so that they're getting something different and then they're experiencing something different. And if you as a brand are so confident in the product that you're selling, then you've got a greater percentage of that pool of customers coming back and not only buying the deodorant as an example, but buying a full priced version of that travel pack that you sold them for free.
Yeah, it's a great example. And I think another one is Space Goods, right? Like what they did last Black Friday. It's almost like they did the free the bundle, but also those free gifts, which almost builds it into your lifestyle to drive LTV of the product. So they had almost the container where you take the Space Goods product out and put it into that container. You had the whisk. You had all these things. It's almost like really pushes you to build this into part of your routine to drive that LTV, because if you're getting all these free gifts and products, it's probably much more likely you're then going to go back to repurchase or subscribe, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've got to as well, like those free gifts, whatever you give, make them sound so desirable, so it just incentivizes it more, even more so maybe than your main SKU in there in certain cases. Yeah, I
think for the brand marketers as well, is like, how can you turn your free gift into something that's markets your brand? Trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but I can't.
A little bit like that Space Goods one with like, because I think the free gift was a scoop, but it was like metal, shiny, and it was like purple, kind of like
it had Goods logo on it.
It had this logo on it, but it was like the brand color, and it was like unmistakable kind of branding.
Yeah,
and it's just shiny. You know what I mean? It's like the sort of shiny object syndrome of like when it's something that's like that that's free.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah, or like stickers, I guess, because I mean, it's a small one, but I think I bought something from a clothing brand recently, and a load of stickers with it for free, and next thing I know, Liv's got one of them on her laptop, just like complete, just owning the brand for everyone to see. So yeah,
Socks. They're a
socks,
great one.
yeah, nice.
Socks and tote bags. Like I'm a killer for a tote
Oh,
bag.
love a good toe. Love a good toe. Yeah, it's so true. It's like, when have you ever been somewhere and there's those free tote bags and you just don't take it, like you always do?
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, I guess just to like round that up from a strategic perspective with the creative, like once we've set those core splits, and we've really considered that offer, the final thing that we then look at on top of that new unique creative is what those quick win and reskins are. So again, there's loads of variations of this and versions of this, and some of our best performers last year came from just reskinning those creatives. So that could be Black Friday hooks on already best performers, as we mentioned, offer skinning. So there was this one creative from a brand we work with called Pulsio, where we literally took a best performing high prod ad that we created, and we literally just put the sticker across the whole ad for the whole thing, which was just Black Friday deal, 20% off in real block capitals. That's another big one. From a static perspective, it's like using that best performing static, changing the headline to what the offer is another one. Another best performer that we've seen work really well there is taking a best performing UGC creative that plays in the background, and then the actual to kind of bring this creative back to life, it's a creative green screened over the best performer, just speaking about the offer specifically. So in this example, the best performer was a low prod ASMR. So that ASMR is playing in the background. We know that's got really good retention. That creative again comes back to that audit, looking at those soft metrics. But then we've just got the creator green screened over the top, talking very specifically about that offer with big block capitals on that creative, saying Black Friday deal. The only other thing just to test and think about during that period is like, and we've kind of discussed this a little bit, it's just those gifting types of creatives, which I think is also really important to think about with Christmas approaching. Like, how can we really drive people to purchase by adding in those small elements that bring in those gifting concepts or gifting hooks that relate to Black Friday. And we had some best performing hooks last year that worked really well, that you can again find within the lead magnet resource under best performing Black Friday hooks. But yeah, that kind of encapsulates, just from a top level perspective, the creative strategy section. Again, it's in the actual lead magnet. Do you guys want to touch on what any additions that you would do from a performance perspective regarding that strategy?
I think from my side, it's just like keeping it really simple, and like how you just like bucketed the different types of customers. Like you could do a similar thing from a paid perspective across whatever platform you're looking at, whether that's like unaware, aware, or engaged and kind of customers. And like our kind of main goal is kind of driving new customer acquisition. So looking at those like aware and kind of unaware, and aware and engaged like customers. Obviously, we've got your unaware, which is like you're prospecting. A high proportion of that's going to be your kind of always on BAU activity, driving customers kind of through the funnel, and kind of there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, you could say. We're seeing great success at the minute with ASC, and then you've also got the new Advantage Plus audiences that kind of Meta have brought out from a overall sales-based campaign, and then kind of a high proportion of our spend from a prospecting perspectives broad. So kind of it kind of speaks for itself, and then from like an aware, engaged perspective, like post iOS, you can't get as granular as you used to, and I think it's just keeping it top level, kind of as broad as you can, and letting kind of the algorithm and AI do its thing, as it's really powerful nowadays, and kind of trying to compete with that is can be a little bit contradictory. And kind of generally speaking, we just retarget people who visited the website and kind of the intent of those customers, and whether that's kind of people who've added to cart, viewed a specific product, etc. But keeping things quite broad, and then kind of targeting them with the creators that you mentioned earlier, and how that relates to the kind of different platforms that we utilize. And then the last thing, which kind of depends on the brand's goals, is kind of retargeting kind of segments of customers, whether that's kind of lapsed customers, kind of overall customers in general. It is very dependent on the brand's goals, and that's kind of 5-10% of our kind of focus as we kind of lead that to kind of retention marketing efforts, which kind of leads us nicely to retention marketing.
It's the complete playbook right there. Yeah, I guess the way I like to view it, I mean, what Jamie said there is like really key. Like there is no magic structure. You've got to trust in Meta to do what it's good at. Like it is, I always say this, but it's way more intelligent than any of us guys. So why not use that? So there is no magic structure. You've got to stick to the principles and what works for your brand already. But yeah, the way I like to view it is you've got your warm up, you've got your pre-Black Friday, and then like your core period. So when that core offer is going to be live, and then any activity after that. So obviously Cyber Monday, and then going into December. So warm up is obviously key. You want to make sure that audience pool that you're going to use to retarget when that core offer is live is maximized, fully nurtured. And we've already touched on how you do that around competitions, just making sure that the competition links to the customer. And then once you've got them and you've captured them, it's about like nurturing them. So really warming them up to the brand if they're fairly cold. Plenty of teasers as well throughout that period for Black Friday. What can they expect? Scarcity, urgency is going to be absolutely key there. And then when you go into that pre-Black Friday period, I think there's two ways to view that. You've either got like a pre-Black Friday offer, or you could link that in with early access. And I think early access is a really great way to reward the people that signed up for the competition. So a couple of ways to do that, and I don't think it really matters. It just depends on what's worked for you already. But then going into that core period, so I'm trying to think of a few tactics here. So cost caps came to mind. I think that's a good one to, like you said, squeeze the juice as much as possible, because cost caps are going off estimated action rates, and estimated action rates are obviously going to be massive over that period. So why not use them to your advantage? Maybe another like tip here as well is like, you kind of touched on it, but just don't turn off anything existing, just to make that like really clear, because that is usually what is going to outperform any new campaigns that you integrate. And again, it comes back down to like Meta knowing best. Those campaigns that you've already got integrated are usually fully optimized. Meta knows what to do with those to use them.
I'd say one more like tactical thing as well that we saw great success with last year is just utilizing the daily budget scheduling tool. And like one brand, for example, we we were aware that a high proportion of those customers were they buy just in general between the hours of 6 and 9. So when looking to like aggressively scale throughout periods, utilizing the budget scheduling tool to push a proportion of budget within that, additional to the overall daily budget. And also the great thing of that is it doesn't take campaigns or ad sets out of learning phase. So again, keeping things as stable as possible.
Yeah. Some more like tactical bits on the retention side. I think brand or like people in charge of retention, for example, they can go a lot more aggressive than you think over that period. Like go really, really aggressive, sending multiple times a day. I don't think there's anything wrong with sending 3, maybe even more times a day throughout Black Friday, especially on the day, because it is a competition. It's a massive competition. When you open your email app on that day, it's chaos.
Yeah.
You don't know where to go. And it's the same for ads. Like competition is massive. Your CPMs are going to be absolutely through the roof, which is also why we were doubling down on static so much. I remember last year seeing in some ad accounts CPMs 3x'd, which is like nuts. Like up to like £75 in the UK is pretty crazy for an AOV of something like 40, 50, 60 £60. Other retention ones I've got here. So segmentation, obviously key. So it's really that personalized journey. So once you've nurtured those customers, get them out into different segments depending on where they're at in the journey. Have they purchased before? Have they not? When did they last purchase? Have they been added to cart? Have they viewed something on your website? Make sure that's super segmented. Deliverability is super key as well. Again, you want to make sure that's like fully optimized, and a way to do that is to get people to interact with your emails, ask them questions, make it conversational. Can you get them into a Black Friday exclusive list to increase deliverability? Plain text as well, massive one for last year. They absolutely crushed. Again, it's that like personal connection depending on where they're at in the funnel, but they will do very, very well. And also your deliverability for those emails tends to be super, super high. And you, Dad?
No, I think you hit the kind of nail on the head with those key bits. I think from a deliverability perspective, like I think majority of the hard work's done before Black Friday.
Yeah.
Black Friday is when you just set everything alight.
Push the button.
Sit back. Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot today. Don't want to go into too much more depth because I think we've got through a decent amount there. I mean, is there any closing statements, thoughts before we wrap up today?
Yeah, make sure as well you haven't got any limiters on your credit cards or when you're ramping up ad spend. That happened to a client last year, and yeah, it was really unfortunate because that can get you suspended if Meta don't like it. So get your credit cards on there, Amex obviously, and then get your backup methods on there as well. Very basic, but it will potentially save you a lot of money.
Nice. Cool. Well, yeah, obviously, if you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share. We're obviously on YouTube at D2C Diaries as well as Spotify. So yeah, we'd recommend obviously watching the YouTube video because again, we'll be sharing these ads that we discussed on screen. But please download our Black Friday. What adjective should we use this time?
You can't even describe it. It's that bomb.
Yeah, it's that
value
big.
bomb.
It's terrifying.
But yeah, it's so we've got two separate ones. We're gonna have both links there to Soar's and then Hambi Media's. Yeah, genuinely everything we've been talking about and more will be in both of those in a lot more depth. So definitely download those completely free of charge. And yeah, I guess like best of luck with the Black Friday planning period. If you need anything from a creative or performance perspective, you can also reach out to Soar and Hambi below. If not, we'll see you on the next episode. Cool.
Amazing.
Thanks for coming along, guys.
Thank you.